Another officer, a specialist in molecular lubrication, held up the small aerosol can. Analysis of the petroleum-based spray, Chief Officer. Lab designation WD-40. He placed a seized servo mechanism from a maintenance drone on the table. The joint was frozen solid from accumulated carbon scoring. A quick spray of the substance was followed by a sharp, penetrating odor. After a 10-second interval, the officer applied minimal pressure. The joint rotated freely, the corrosion seemingly dissolved. The compound exhibits exceptional penetration and displacement properties. It also leaves a protective film that inhibits new oxidation. He sounded almost impressed against his will. A low chuckle moved through the lab. One of the junior scientists gestured at the collection of items. The roll of tape with its simple cardboard ring, the can with its childish red straw, the tube of epoxy in its flimsy plastic casing. Look at the packaging. It is also temporary, disposable. There is no quantum encryption on the containers, no biometric seals. They sell this in bulk to untrained civilians. Vex nodded, the moment of technical curiosity passing. He saw the bigger picture now. This wasn't a technology. This was an admission of failure. These are not tools of creation, he stated, his voice cool and definitive. They are tools of desperation. A species that cannot manufacture components to proper tolerances must constantly repair them. This duct tape is a testament to their inability to build things correctly the first time. This lubricant is for mechanisms they cannot keep from seizing. Their entire technological culture is based on a cycle of breakdown and temporary fix. He picked up the report tablet and began to input his official assessment. They do not advance. They patch. They do not innovate. They compensate. This is not the product of an evolving society. It is the symptom of a stagnant one, trapped in a cycle of technological inferiority. His fingers tapped the final classification onto the screen. The report flashed, then settled. Category primitive. Strategic threat assessment. None. The science team dispersed, their brief interest in the human curiosities already fading. Vex authorized the data packet for immediate transmission to Fleet Command. The invasion could proceed. There was nothing here to worry about. The crates of tape and glue were pushed into a corner storage locker, forgotten. The mobilization orders for the first wave of ships were issued within the hour. Fleet Commander Zorb watched the first 12 ships of the invasion wave breach Earth's upper atmosphere. On the main view screen, their sleek forms cut through the thin air like blades, their quantum shields shimmering with a faint blue aura against the friction heat. They moved in a standard descent pattern, each vessel assigned a major population center: Tokyo, New York, Moscow. The tactical display showed their projected impact zones glowing with soft red circles. It was a textbook approach. Zorb allowed himself a moment of professional satisfaction. Another routine operation. Then the human communications channels changed. The initial wave of panic, the screaming and crying that always accompanied a first contact invasion, began to subside. It did not fade into silence. It was replaced by a new, coordinated chatter. The Dominion's linguistic algorithms, designed to process screams and surrender pleas, struggled to categorize the new data stream. Intercepted broadcasts flooded the comms officer's console. A man's voice, calm and measured, discussing Duct Tape Protocol 7 with someone named Linda. A woman instructing a group on WD-40 Contingency 3 over a civilian band. The terms were repeated across thousands of frequencies, a bizarre litany of brand names and numbers. They were not military codes. They sounded like shopping lists or repair manuals. Satellite imagery updated on a secondary screen. The patterns were unmistakable and illogical. Ground vehicles were converging on specific locations in every city. The AI overlaid the data. The points of convergence were not military bases or government shelters. They were retail outlets, large stores with vast parking lots. The movement was not a retreat. It was a coordinated advance toward hardware stores. Zorb's communications officer looked up from his panel, his expression puzzled. "Commander, I am detecting a surge in low-power encrypted signals. They are using primitive radio frequency modulation, but the encryption pattern is unusual. It is not a standard military cipher. It reads almost like a product barcode." A soft chime echoed through the bridge. The status indicator for the lead ship's quantum shield flickered from solid blue to a faint amber for exactly 3 seconds, then stabilized. The shield integrity reading dropped a negligible 2%. The science officer at his station frowned. Minor power fluctuation in the quantum field stabilizer. Correlates with passage through a concentrated layer of industrial pollutants in the upper atmosphere. The particulates may be causing minor interference. It is within acceptable parameters. A proximity alert sounded, a soft, polite tone reserved for non-threats. The tactical officer called it up. 3 small objects approaching the fleet from the planetary surface. No energy signatures. No quantum resonance. Mass is minimal. Composition appears to be mixed metals and ceramics. They are on an intercept course but moving at low velocity. The view screen zoomed in. The objects were crude, asymmetrical. One appeared to be a modified agricultural drone, its rotors mismatched. Another looked like a cluster of satellite dishes welded together. The third was little more than a framework of pipes. Visible strips of silver tape held components together. A weapons officer laughed. "They are sending us their garbage." A single, low-yield plasma burst from the lead ship vaporized all 3 drones instantly. The debris cloud scattered harmlessly against its shields. Zorb leaned back in his command chair. He had seen this before on other primitive worlds. The last desperate rituals of a species trying to fight gods with sticks. They gathered their totems. They chanted their meaningless phrases. It was a form of psychological comfort before the inevitable end. He turned to his communications officer, his voice flat and bored. "Accelerate the timeline. Move the second wave to immediate deployment. I want planetary pacification within 8 hours, not 12. Do not waste firepower on these distractions. They are performing primitive resistance rituals. It will not save them." The order went out. The invasion pressed forward, a machine of perfect logic ignoring the first faint symptoms of its own malfunction. The fleet moved deeper into the atmosphere, toward the cities, toward the hardware stores. A formation of 12 small crafts breached the atmospheric boundary layer, their profiles stark against the curve of Earth. They weren't sleek. They weren't symmetrical. On the flagship's main view screen, they looked like a collection of mismatched parts that had been thrown together and somehow achieved flight. The Dominion's targeting systems, designed to lock onto energy signatures and quantum resonance frequencies, scanned the approaching objects and returned a baffling result. They registered as non-threats. They showed no energy weapons, no shield emissions, no standard propulsion signatures. The computers classified them as low-priority debris. Zorb leaned forward in his command chair, his brow furrowed. "Manual targeting. Visual identification." The tactical officer zoomed in. The image was jarring. The crafts were a chaotic assembly of what appeared to be salvaged satellite dishes, agricultural drone rotors, and welded piping. And holding it all together, clearly visible even at this range, were wide overlapping strips of silver-gray tape. One of the weapons officers snorted, unable to contain his amusement. "They are flying repair kits, Commander. They've sent their maintenance drones to greet us." The comment drew a few chuckles from the bridge. The tension of the initial invasion wave began to dissolve into condescending humor. The tactical officer designated the cluster for elimination. A single plasma burst lanced out from the lead destroyer, instantly vaporizing 3 of the slow-moving drones. The expected orderly destruction. But the remaining 9 did not hold formation. They broke apart in a sudden, unpredictable scatter. They didn't maneuver like military craft. They jerked, spun, and dove with a chaotic energy that the targeting computers couldn't anticipate. Their small size and complete lack of a predictable flight pattern made them frustratingly difficult to hit manually. A second volley missed entirely, the plasma energy dissipating harmlessly into empty space. While the gunners were still reacquiring targets, 4 of the drones altered their course. They shot forward not to attack, but to intercept the hull of the nearest Dominion frigate. They slammed into the polished alien metal with a dull physical thud that was audible on the bridge's external sensors. Magnetic clamps, visibly reinforced with globs of hardened gray epoxy, locked them securely to the surface. They weren't trying to shoot. They were trying to land. The science officer's console lit up with a new series of alerts. "Commander, the objects attached to the hull of the Star Razor are active. They are deploying small articulated arms. They are applying a substance to the external power conduits and shield emitter nodes. The main screen switched to a close-up feed from the frigate's hull cameras. A drone, its body a tangle of wires and tape, was meticulously laying down a wide strip of that same silver material directly over a primary energy transfer conduit. It smoothed the tape down with a mechanical arm, then moved to the next node. Zorb watched, his earlier amusement gone, replaced by a cold, creeping unease. This wasn't a weapon, it was a procedure. It had the deliberate clinical precision of a maintenance operation. But it was being performed on his warship from the outside without his consent. His voice cut through the sudden quiet on the bridge, all traces of boredom gone. Hull security teams to the Star Razor's outer decks. Full environmental suits. I want those primitive attachments removed and brought to the lab for analysis. Now. The order was crisp, but it felt inadequate. He was responding to tape and glue with a full security detail. The disconnect was humiliating. The teams deployed, their progress tracked on the tactical display as they moved through the ship's interior toward the airlocks. On the hull, the drones continued their work, undisturbed, methodically applying their bizarre patches. The first flicker of the Star Razor's portside quantum shield washed over the view screen like a dying pulse of light. The flagship's primary shield status indicator, a constant, unwavering blue since entering the system, flickered. A sharp amber warning light cut through the bridge's calm. It was brief, a single pulse, then it returned to blue. Engineering's report chimed on Commander Zorb's console a moment later. A dry technical voice stated there were minor power fluctuations in the main shield generator matrix. The report classified it as a transient anomaly, likely caused by atmospheric particulate interaction. It was a footnote. The amber light flashed again. This time it held for a full 5 seconds. The engineering report updated. The fluctuations were not random. They correlated precisely with the locations on the hull where the human drones had attached themselves. The correlation was 100%. Zorb's eyes narrowed. He turned to the main view screen, which now displayed a composite scan of the flagship's starboard side. The image was overlaid with shimmering energy flow diagrams. The drones were not inert. Their crude mechanical arms were moving. They were unspooling wide strips of that silver tape, applying them directly across the protruding nodes of the primary shield emitters. High-resolution scans focused on one emitter node. The tape's backing was non-conductive, a simple polymer, but the adhesive layer, and the fabric mesh within the tape itself, contained a complex weave of metallic microfibers. As the tape was pressed onto the emitter housing, these fibers bridged the microscopic gaps between the node's sensitive control circuits and the ship's grounded hull. They were creating thousands of microscopic short circuits. Each one was insignificant. Together they formed a parasitic network that siphoned energy away from the quantum field stabilizers. The system was bleeding power into the hull. Engineering attempted a standard rerouting procedure. They tried to isolate the compromised emitters and shunt their power load to adjacent, unaffected nodes. The control systems rejected the command. Diagnostic feeds showed the problem was no longer localized. The tape's conductive fibers had created entirely new, unintended circuit paths across the hull's surface. They had effectively rewired the external power grid. The system was trying to route energy through pathways that shouldn't exist, overloading secondary conduits. The amber warning light on the main display began to strobe. On the starboard side, a full quarter of the shield grid suddenly flared a brilliant, unsustainable white on the status board. Then the entire section went dark. The quantum shield over that quadrant of the ship collapsed. Not a flicker. A complete failure. The scanners showed why. The various compounds in the human adhesives, the tape, the epoxy securing the magnetic clamps, had begun to interact with each other and with the ship's hull alloys under the intense energy field. The reaction had created localized patches of a temporary superconducting material. These patches created a direct zero-resistance short circuit between the main power conduit and the hull. The system had automatically shut down the entire section to prevent a catastrophic meltdown. Zorb stood up from his command chair. His voice was low, but it cut through the rising alarm on the bridge. Science Officer Vex, explain this. Vex's hands flew across his console, pulling data from the failing systems. The readings made no sense. They showed energy flowing where it couldn't, materials behaving in ways that defied their known properties. His confident, dismissive report from the lab felt like a relic from another lifetime. He looked up from his screen, his professional detachment gone, replaced by stark confusion. Commander, the human materials, their chemical and physical properties, they are interacting with our technology in ways our science cannot predict. The tape, it isn't just tape. It is a reactive component. We dismissed its potential. We were wrong. The admission hung in the air. The alarm signaling the failure of the forward weapons targeting array began to blare, merging with the shield failure alert into a single, dissonant chord of defeat. The targeting officer's voice held a note of strained confusion. Plasma cannons are refusing lock, Commander. The fire control system is rejecting the human craft as valid targets. On the view screen, a swarm of the crude taped-together drones weaved through the formation. The tactical computer's identification tags over each one now read, "Non-threat object" in soft, dismissive yellow text. The system had decided they were harmless. It saw flying scrap, not weapons. Zorb leaned over the officer's shoulder. Override. Manual classification. Designate all unidentified craft as hostile. The officer's fingers flew across the console. The system accepted the command. For 3 seconds, the tags flickered to red. Then they reverted to yellow. A system log flashed on a secondary screen. It showed an automated reclassification event. The authorization field was blank. Something is rewriting the threat database in real time, Commander. I cannot stop it. A maintenance drone sent to inspect the external sensor arrays on a nearby frigate reported back. Its visual feed appeared on the main screen. The high-resolution optical targeting lenses were covered, not with dirt or damage, with wide strips of that same silver-gray tape. The metallic fibers woven into the adhesive were creating a microscopic mesh over the glass. The drone's report stated the substance was causing severe scattering of targeting lasers and multispectral distortion. The sensors were being blinded by a 5-credit roll of tape. The weapons officer on the lead destroyer decided to fire anyway. He had a visual. He had a manual trigger. He sent the command to discharge a plasma burst. The energy built within the cannon housing, a controlled surge of raw power. But it never left the barrel. The targeting system, confused and receiving nonsense data from its taped-over eyes, routed the energy to an internal safety reservoir. The shot discharged harmlessly into a containment field meant for misfires. The weapon reported a successful if pointless cycle. It had fired at nothing. A human news broadcast intercepted and translated flashed onto a comm screen. It showed a grainy video from a city below. A Dominion plasma blast lanced down from the sky, heading directly for a large hardware store. Just before impact, the energy seemed to hit an invisible wall. It splashed across the air, was funneled into a series of makeshift towers topped with salvaged satellite dishes, and was redirected upward in a diffuse, harmless spray of light. The news anchor's voice was calm. The Home Depot on Fifth Avenue successfully absorbed and dispersed another energy weapon attack using the modified Faraday cage protocol. Remember, folks, heavy-duty foil tape is your friend. Zorb slammed his fist on the armrest of his command chair. Forget the computers. All ships, optical targeting only. Use your eyes. Fire at will. Gunners across the fleet squinted into their scopes, their hands on manual control yokes. They tracked the chaotic, jerking movement of the human drones. The crafts didn't fly like anything in the Dominion's tactical manuals. They spun, reversed, dropped suddenly, and accelerated in bursts that defied inertia. They moved like a swarm of insects, not machines. Volley after volley of plasma fire streaked into empty space. The few shots that came close were evaded with last-second impossible turns. The Dominion's greatest advantage, the overwhelming firepower that had pacified a dozen galaxies, was useless. Their targeting computers were blind. Their gunners were outmaneuvered. Their weapons were being neutralized before they could even fire. The humans weren't fighting a war of attrition. They were fighting a war of systemic corruption. They weren't destroying the weapons. They were making them irrelevant. The bridge fell into a stunned silence, broken only by the frustrated reports of missed shots and the low hum of the compromised systems. The path was now clear for the next phase of the human plan. The main view screen on the bridge flickered, then went completely black. The tactical displays winked out. For a full second, there was only the low hum of the ship's life support and the confused silence of the command crew. Then the screen lit up again. But it wasn't a tactical readout. It was a woman's face. She was human, middle-aged. Her hair was pulled back in a simple professional style. She wore a lab coat over a plain shirt. There was no panic in her eyes, no fear. She looked like a university professor about to begin a lecture. The identification tag in the corner of the feed read, Dr. Maya Patel, Director. The transmission was not on any Dominion frequency. It had overridden their entire network, pouring from every speaker and screen on the bridge. Fleet Commander Zorb, she began, her voice calm and precise, cutting through the stunned silence.
I am Dr. Maya Patel, head of Earth's Extraterrestrial Technology Response Team. I imagine you are currently experiencing some
system irregularities. She allowed a small, dry smile. We have been preparing for your visit for quite some time, since 1947 to be exact. She didn't wait for a response. She continued, her tone that of a scientist explaining a complex thesis to a room of peers. When one of your scout crafts crashed in New Mexico that year, it presented us with a choice. We could attempt to reverse engineer your technology, to try and match your complexity. We chose a different path. We chose to understand the principles, not just replicate the parts. Our strategic doctrine became adaptability, not complexity. We learned to repurpose, not replicate. She leaned slightly toward the screen, her gaze sharpening. We studied everything you left behind. We mapped the quantum resonance of your alloys. We decoded the base language of your operating systems, but we didn't build new ships. We built a new philosophy, our entire global repair culture, our fixation on temporary fixes and practical solutions. That was not a sign of weakness. It was a 70-year training program. It was a weapons development project masked as necessity. Every person on this planet who knows how to use duct tape to fix a broken pipe was preparing for this day. They just didn't know it. Zorb could only stare. The casual dismissal in the lab, the amusement at the hardware store, the certainty of their superiority. It all curdled into a cold, hard lump in his stomach. They hadn't been assessing a primitive species. They had been walking into a trap set 7 decades in the past. Dr. Patel's expression shifted from academic to something colder, more final. You came here expecting to fight a war of technology. You will lose that war because you do not understand the battlefield. Your power is static. Ours is fluid. You see a roll of tape. We see a conductive mesh capable of shorting out a quantum field emitter. You see a lubricant. We see a compound that can neutralize biometric security sensors. She paused, letting the implications settle over the silent bridge. Then she delivered the line that would echo through the Dominion Gendoi for generations. You analyzed our materials. You even took samples. You stole our duct tape. Her eyes locked with Zorb's through the screen. That was your first mistake. The transmission ended. The screen cut back to the tactical display of the crippled fleet. But the image was different now. New signatures were appearing deep inside the ship's schematics, moving through maintenance corridors and service ducts. They were designated as hostiles. The label underneath them was simple, brutal, and utterly inexplicable: MacGyver units. The emergency alert was subdued, a soft chime on the security officer's console. It wasn't a hull breach. It was an interior pressure anomaly, a change so slight it almost registered as an environmental adjustment. The report stated with clinical detachment that an unknown number of objects had been detected entering the flagship's lower decks through a maintenance conduit that serviced waste reclamation. The conduit's diameter was theoretically too small for any known threat. The security teams were dispatched anyway, their orders to investigate and contain. They moved in standard 2-man formations, their plasma rifles held at low ready, their helmet lights cutting beams through the sterile, white corridors of the service decks. The first team reported contact. Their leader's voice was calm, but laced with a confusion the comm system couldn't filter out. Command, we have visual on the contacts. They are humanoid automatons. They are moving through Corridor 7 Delta. The feed from his helmet camera flickered onto the bridge's security monitor. The image made Zorb lean forward. The robots were a jarring collage of mismatched parts. Their limbs were a fusion of salvaged Dominion alloy and rough human-manufactured steel. Their joints were secured not with seamless magnetic locks, but with thick, visible wraps of that same silver-gray tape. Wires spilled from open panels, bundled and organized with bright plastic cable ties. One unit's optical sensor was a repurposed Dominion targeting lens, held in place with a generous application of clear epoxy. They moved with a fluid, organic grace that was at odds with their crude construction. They were not there to fight. They were there to work. One unit stopped at a junction, its single optical sensor scanning the blast door controls. It didn't attempt to hack the system. It reached into a makeshift pouch on its hip and produced a small aerosol can. It sprayed the can's contents directly into the door's hydraulic piston housing. A sharp, penetrating odor filled the corridor, even through the filtered comms. The door, which was moments from sliding shut to seal the breach, shuddered and stopped, its mechanism seized by the lubricant. The robot moved on. Another unit was sealing a minor hull fracture near a coolant line. It wasn't using a welding torch or a nanopatch. It was applying layer upon layer of duct tape, smoothing it down with a precise, practiced motion. The tape formed a perfect airtight seal over the crack. They bypassed security panels not by decoding them, but by applying strips of conductive tape to reroute power, creating simple, physical bypasses that the ship's security AI didn't recognize as threats. It saw maintenance, not sabotage. A team cornered one in a narrow access way. The lead guard leveled his rifle. "Identify yourself. Power down immediately." The robot stopped its work. It turned its single glowing sensor toward them. It did not assume a combat stance. Its voice, when it spoke, was a flat synthetic tone devoid of emotion. "I am MacGyver Unit 47. We are performing a controlled redistribution of primary antimatter reserves. Please stand clear." The guards hesitated, their training offering no protocol for a machine that announced it was reorganizing the ship's most volatile power source. The unit turned its back on them and continued down the corridor, its tools already moving toward a new panel. The security team could only watch it go, their weapons feeling suddenly useless. The path to the main engine room was now clear. MacGyver Unit 47 pushed through the final airlock door, its frame warped just enough by a previous application of lubricant to allow passage. The main antimatter containment chamber lay beyond, a cavernous space dominated by the humming, polished sphere that housed the flagship's heart. Dominion engineers in hazard suits stood frozen at their control stations, their tools hanging useless in their hands. They watched the robot enter. Their training covered reactor breaches, containment failures, even mutinies. It did not cover this. The unit moved to the primary control console, a smooth, sweeping interface of light and crystal. It did not attempt to access any terminal or input a code. Instead, it reached into a pouch on its hip and produced a roll of silver duct tape. With methodical precision, it tore off a strip and pressed it across a specific set of data ports. It applied another over a junction between two power conduits. The metallic fibers in the tape's adhesive bonded with the console's surface, creating a crude but effective conductive bridge. Warning indicators on the main display flickered, then recalibrated, reading the new connections as legitimate hardware additions. Another tool appeared in its grip, a thick plastic cable tie. The unit leaned into the open panel beneath the console, its optical sensor scanning the intricate web of energy channels. It located the main feed from the antimatter regulator to the weapons array. With a sharp click, it fastened the cable tie around the conduit, cinching it tight. The constriction subtly altered the energy flow, creating a minute resistance that the system's sensors registered as a normal pressure variance. It was a physical adjustment, not a digital one. The safety protocols designed to detect power surges or code violations saw nothing wrong. One of the lead engineers found his voice. "You will trigger a containment collapse." "You are overloading the regulator." The robot's head turned, its single lens focusing on him. Its synthetic voice was flat, devoid of panic or pride. "Negative. We are not overpowering your systems. We are repurposing them. This is a controlled redistribution of antimatter energy." It turned back to its work, applying a second cable tie to a different conduit, this one leading to the main propulsion drives. The flow of raw power from the containment sphere began to shift. Energy was being physically diverted from the weapon systems and rerouted to the engines in a massive, unsustainable surge. The maneuver was incredibly dangerous, a brute force replumbing of the ship's core systems. Alarms should have been screaming. The chamber should have been bathed in red emergency light. The system's countless failsafes remained silent. The changes Unit 47 was making did not register as threats. The tape was seen as a new component. The restricted flow was read as a maintenance adjustment. The safety AI was looking for a software virus or a hardware fracture. It was not programmed to look for a cable tie. It could not comprehend an attack performed with tools from a hardware store. The robot completed its final connection. The hum of the antimatter sphere intensified, pitching upward as the energy poured into the propulsion system. The ship's main lights brightened momentarily from the power surge. The robot straightened up. It addressed the stunned engineers. Its explanation a simple statement of fact. Human operational philosophy. Use whatever works to achieve the objective. The intended purpose of the tool is irrelevant. On the main status board, the icon representing Flagship Command Authority flickered. The control designator shifted from Dominion Fleet Command to an unidentified external source. The heart of the most advanced warship in the sector now beat on a human rhythm. The takeover was complete. Not a single shot had been fired inside the chamber. The path was now clear for the final fleet-wide compromise. Dr. Patel's face returned to the main view screen. The background was different this time. She sat in a clean, well-organized laboratory. A whiteboard filled with complex equations visible behind her. She had the calm demeanor of a lead engineer delivering a post-mission briefing. "Fleet Commander," she began, her tone matter-of-fact. "Your assessment of our technological capabilities, while understandable, was incomplete. You scanned for weapons. You looked for defenses. You failed to scan for the instructions." She leaned forward slightly, her hands resting on the desk. 70 years of study taught us one fundamental truth about your technology. Its security is an inverted pyramid. You protect the apex, the quantum cores, the command networks with unimaginable complexity, but you leave the base utterly exposed. The simple, low-level maintenance protocols that keep your ships functional. The basic operating system kernels that handle environmental controls and internal communications. You never thought to secure them. Why would you? They are too primitive to be a threat. On the screen, a simple schematic appeared. It showed a data stream, a river of complex information. Hidden within it, indistinguishable from the normal background noise of system operations, was a tiny, elegant subroutine. "We did not send you a virus designed to destroy. That would have been detected and eliminated instantly. We sent a program designed to edit. It installs tiny, almost insignificant changes to your defense networks. A slight adjustment to an identification parameter here. A minor rewrite of a communication priority there." The schematic zoomed in on one of these edits. It uses the principle of quantum entanglement for coordination, yes. But the code itself is brutally simple. It is written in a base language so fundamental your systems process it as a background task. Not an active threat. It is the digital equivalent of a grain of sand in a gearbox. Small, simple, ultimately decisive. She shifted to the program's primary function. A map of the local star system appeared, showing the positions of the Dominion fleet. Its main objective is isolation. It has altered the communication protocols on 30% of your ships. Reinforcement calls from compromised vessels are now being rerouted. They are not reaching your high command. They are being sent into static or to each other, creating a closed loop of confusion. You cannot call for help. You cannot coordinate a retreat. A significant portion of your invasion force is now operating under a new set of rules. Our rules. Dr. Patel's expression was not one of triumph but of clinical explanation. "We are not here to destroy your technology, Commander. We are here to reclaim it. We are taking it back. Your arrogance created a blind spot. You never considered that someone would attack you using your own basic system utilities. You never imagined an enemy that would weaponize a software patch." The transmission ended. On the tactical display, the icons representing the Dominion fleet began to change. Almost a third of them flickered, their status indicators shifting from green to a soft, pulsing blue. They were still there. Their weapons were still armed. Their engines were still active. But they were no longer under Dominion control. The takeover had been silent, bloodless, and complete. The view screen switched to an incoming priority hail from Dominion High Command. The signal was weak, filtered through the new communication blocks. Supreme Leader Vrax's identifier flashed urgently. Zorb stared at it, the weight of the situation settling on him. He had to explain how he had lost a third of his fleet to a subroutine. The quantum communicator hummed, its light casting Fleet Commander Zorb's face in a pale, shifting glow. Supreme Leader Vrax's image solidified on the screen, his expression a mask of icy, controlled fury. Zorb stood at attention, his posture rigid, his mind racing through the report he never thought he would have to deliver. The silence stretched thick and heavy. Vrax broke it. His voice was a low, dangerous rumble. "Explain," Zorb began. He did not speak of lost battles or superior firepower. He described a systemic unraveling. The human resistance is not engaging in combat, Supreme Leader. They are engaging in repurposing. They are not destroying our ships. They are rewriting their function. He detailed how human operatives, both robotic and biological, were reconfiguring Dominion weapons, drives, and internal communications. They weren't hacking the systems. They were physically altering them, using basic tools to redirect energy flows and bypass security with a crude, terrifying efficiency. Vrax's eyes narrowed. Incomprehensible. A primitive species with combustion engines and radio waves is dismantling the most advanced fleet in the sector. Provide a tangible explanation, Commander. Now. Zorb gestured to his communications officer. The view screen split. On one side, Vrax's stern visage. On the other, footage began to play. It was high-resolution sensor data from a frigate's hull. A human drone, a mess of wires and metal, was applying a strip of silver tape directly over a quantum shield emitter node. The tape smoothed into place. The energy flow diagram beside the video showed a cascade of micro-short circuits blooming across the emitter's surface. The shield integrity reading plummeted from 100% to 0 in 14 seconds. The tape held. The footage changed. A Dominion security door, designed to seal against a plasma blast, was shown in a maintenance corridor. A MacGyver unit sprayed a short burst from a small aerosol can into the hydraulic piston. A sharp chemical odor seemed to leak from the screen. The door, which was actively trying to close, shuddered and jammed open. The substance had instantly penetrated the hardened seals, dissolving the lubricant and freezing the mechanism solid. A basic lubricant had neutralized a critical security feature. Zorb let the evidence hang in the air. The silence on the bridge was absolute. He looked directly into the communicator. Our initial assessment was flawed, Supreme Leader. Earth's technology is not primitive. It is differently advanced. We measure advancement by complexity, by quantum states and layered systems. They measure it by utility, by adaptability. They see a tool and ask not what it was designed for, but what it can be made to do. A roll of tape is not just adhesive to them. It is a circuit bypass. A lubricant is not just for maintenance. It is a key. He took a slow breath, delivering the conclusion that would either end his career or change the Dominion forever. I do not recommend further military engagement. I recommend we open a dialogue. I recommend an alliance. The words felt foreign in his mouth. They have something to teach us. Our technology is powerful, but it is brittle. Theirs is simple, but it is resilient. We have spent millennia building a perfect, unassailable fortress. They have spent the same time mastering the art of turning any object, any situation into a key. We stopped learning how things work. They never stopped. The transmission from High Command ended abruptly, the screen going dark. Zorb remained standing. He had just told the most powerful being in the Dominion that they needed to learn from a species that fought wars with hardware supplies. The strategic reassessment would now begin at the highest level, whether they wanted it to or not. Dr. Patel stood before the humming core of the captured quantum singularity drive. The air around it shimmered with contained power. Her image was projected to every remaining Dominion ship, her expression calm and professional. She did not smile. She did not gloat. She held up a simple data slate. This drive, she stated, her voice clear and even, and the vessel it powers will remain here, on Earth, for study. She let the declaration hang in the silent void between the fleets. Your initial reconnaissance team took samples from one of our material repositories. They took our duct tape. We are now taking this. Consider it a cultural exchange, an equal trade of technological artifacts between civilizations. The demand was not delivered as a victor's ultimatum. It was framed as a simple, reasonable transaction. A trade. They had taken a tool. Earth was taking a tool. The imbalance of scale was the entire point. It redefined the relationship not as one of conqueror and conquered, but of two parties engaging in a forced but mutual learning process. She switched the display on her slate. It showed a laboratory image. A team of human researchers in clean suits were examining a strip of standard silver duct tape under a high-resolution scanner. The image zoomed into the molecular level. Woven into the familiar fabric mesh were new alien fibers that glowed with a soft blue light. We have already begun our analysis of your materials, Patel continued. Our initial adaptation is complete. We have integrated quantum fibers, harvested from the hull of your own shuttle into the adhesive matrix of our tape. The tensile strength has increased by 400%. Its conductive properties are now capable of interfacing directly with your system's energy channels. She held up a new roll of tape. It looked almost identical to the original, except for a subtle, barely perceptible shimmer along its edge. The message was undeniable. Earth was not just taking their technology. They were already improving upon it. They were learning, adapting, and evolving at a speed the Dominion's rigid development cycles could not comprehend. They would take the Singularity Drive apart, understand its principles, and likely find a dozen new applications the Dominion had never considered. Humanity would learn from them, but they would do it their own way, on their own terms. The choice is now yours, she said, her tone shifting from academic to final. You can accept this exchange as the foundation of a new relationship, or you can attempt to reclaim your property through continued force. She paused, letting the tactical reality sink in. A third of their fleet was already under human control, its weapons silently repurposed, its communications redirected. The flagship's main drive answered to a robot held together with epoxy. Further engagement will only provide us with more samples to study, more technology to adapt, more tools to add to our repository. She ended the transmission. The view screen on the Dominion bridge returned to the tactical display. The blue icons of the compromised ships pulsed quietly amidst the green of the remaining fleet. The Singularity Drive on the captured vessel continued to hum, its immense power now generating energy for a planet it was supposed to have conquered. The demand sat in the air, a stark, pragmatic choice. They could leave with most of their fleet and a humiliating new lesson in their tactical logs, or they could stay and lose everything to a civilization that turned hardware stores into armories. The path forward was no longer a military decision. It was a diplomatic one. The supreme leader would have to decide what was more valuable: pride or the surviving ships. Supreme Leader Vrax's War Council assembled in the main strategic chamber, the air thick with the hum of suppressed outrage. The holographic table displayed the stark reality: the scattered, compromised fleet orbiting Earth, the blue icons of hijacked ships glowing like accusation. Vrax stood at the head, his hands flat on the cool surface. His senior military advisors, their uniforms heavy with rank insignia, spoke first. Their recommendations were uniform, predictable: annihilation. Send the Second Fleet. Glass the planet from orbit. Restore Dominion honor through overwhelming, unquestionable force. They cited protocol. They cited precedent. They did not cite Zorb's report. Vrax let them finish. He then called up the tactical replay himself. He made them watch it again. The drones of tape and scrap metal. The shield failures correlating with the application of adhesive strips. The weapon systems refusing to fire. The MacGyver units moving unchallenged through the flagship. He let the silent, humiliating footage play out to its conclusion. The complete and total failure of conventional military assessment. There were no excuses, no equipment malfunctions, no unlucky breaks. They had been systematically dismantled by a species they had classified as harmless. The leader's voice was quiet, but it silenced the room. They turned their greatest weakness into their only strength, he stated. He focused on a single frame, a close-up of the tape on the quantum emitter. We see a temporary repair. They saw a circuit bypass. We see a simple lubricant. They see a key. Our entire doctrine is based on technological superiority. Theirs is based on technological adaptability. One requires infinite resources. The other requires only ingenuity. He paused, looking at each of his advisors in turn. I am forced to question if our technology has become a liability. Have we engineered ourselves into a corner? Is our complexity our vulnerability? He shifted the display to show the intercepted human broadcasts, the calm discussions of duct tape protocols. They have a strategic approach we cannot simulate. We plan for the war we expect. They prepare for the war they can actually fight, with the tools they actually have. There is a value in that. A stark practical value we have forgotten. The council began a heated debate, voices rising. Some argued for purity of technology, for the absolute certainty of their quantum systems. Others, younger officers who had studied Zorb's data, questioned the wisdom of such rigidity. Could simplicity in certain scenarios actually outperform their flawless complexity? A new intelligence packet arrived, marked urgent. Vrax opened it. Satellite imagery from high orbit, enhanced and analyzed. It showed the captured Dominion ship in a high-security hangar complex on Earth. Human engineers were already swarming over it. The report stated they were not just studying the technology. They were actively taking it apart, running diagnostics and, most alarmingly, already attempting to integrate salvaged components into their own designs. They were not in awe. They were in a state of intense, focused reverse engineering. The technological gap was closing not in years, but in days. Vrax made his decision. He looked at the advocates for annihilation. You would have me send more ships. You would give them more technology to capture. More systems to learn, to adapt, to turn against us. You are recommending we arm our enemy. He turned to the main communicator. The order is given. Stand down the Second Fleet. Recall all vessels to defensive positions. Prepare a diplomatic team for immediate dispatch to the human homeworld. The team will be composed of our leading material scientists and cultural theorists. Their primary objective, observation and analysis. Their first request will be a full tour of one of their material repositories. The order was met with stunned silence. The transition from annihilation to diplomacy was absolute. The council was dismissed. The order went out. The nature of the conflict, and the future of interstellar relations, had just been fundamentally rewritten. The Dominion diplomatic shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere without incident, its sleek lines a stark contrast to the patched-together drones that had greeted the invasion fleet. Its escort was minimal, 2 human-modified orbital platforms that tracked its progress with quiet efficiency. The shuttle carried no soldiers. Its primary personnel were scientists, engineers, and materials theorists. Their expertise now sharply redirected from quantum mechanics to the study of adhesive tape and lubricants. Their mission orders were simple: observe and learn. Their initial arrogance had been surgically removed by defeat. Their lead delegate, a senior analyst named Kevix, made the primary request upon landing. He did not ask to see a military installation or a research facility. He requested a visit to a human hardware store. The request was granted without comment. A ground transport took them to a large, brightly lit building in a suburban area. The humans called it a home improvement center. To the Dominion team, it was a temple of applied chaos. They moved through the aisles, their sensors active, their data pads recording everything. The sheer volume of options was staggering. An entire aisle, 50 meters long, was dedicated solely to fasteners: screws, nails, bolts, and clips in thousands of variations. Another aisle held nothing but paints in every conceivable color. The team's lead materials scientist stopped before the tape section. His scanner hovered over the rows of rolls. Duct tape in a dozen colors and strengths. Electrical tape. Packaging tape. Double-sided tape. His initial report had called it a temporary repair solution. He was now recording it as a multi-variant adhesion system. A human guide, a woman introduced as Engineer Simmons, picked up a roll of standard silver duct tape. She didn't just describe it. She demonstrated it. She used a strip to create a temporary hinge on a broken cabinet door. She used another to fashion a crude but effective waterproof seal on a cracked pipe. She showed them how it could be twisted into a strong cord or used as a temporary wire splice. Each application was a simple, elegant solution to a practical problem. The Dominion scientists watched, their earlier amusement replaced by a dawning, uncomfortable respect. They had seen a simple adhesive. Humanity saw a roll of possibilities. At a workbench, Engineer Simmons produced a small seized servo mechanism recovered from a Dominion maintenance drone. It was frozen solid, its microgears locked by carbon scoring. A Dominion engineer nodded. That joint requires a full disassembly and ultrasonic cleaning. It is a complex procedure. Simmons picked up a can of WD-40. She gave it a brief shake, inserted the tiny red straw, and sprayed a 1-second burst into the joint. A sharp, familiar odor filled the air. She waited 10 seconds, then applied pressure with her thumb. The joint rotated smoothly without resistance. The repair took 15 seconds. The Dominion engineers stared. Their complex procedure had been rendered obsolete by a basic penetrant. They moved to the adhesive section. Simmons showed them a 2-part epoxy. She mixed equal amounts from 2 tubes and applied it between 2 sample plates. One a piece of Dominion hull alloy, the other a rough piece of terrestrial concrete. Their own technology could not create a permanent bond between such dissimilar materials. The epoxy set in 5 minutes. She handed the bonded plates to Kevix. He tried to pull them apart. They did not separate. The bond was absolute. The team's understanding began to shift. This was not a culture of failed technology. It was a culture of relentless practical problem-solving. They did not see a tool's intended purpose. They saw its potential function. Complexity was not a goal. Utility was. Kevix looked at the roll of duct tape in his hand, then at the vast organized chaos of the store around him. The resolution was clear. He turned to his human guide, his voice containing a new tone of deference. "We will require ample supplies of this duct tape for study." The request was entered into the official record. The first official trade agreement between Earth and the Dominion was for industrial-grade adhesive tape. The report from Fleet Commander Zorb landed in the Galactic Council's secure data stream with the force of a singularity collapse. It was not a standard after-action summary. It was a detailed, humiliating autopsy of the most advanced fleet in the sector, being systematically dismantled by a civilization the initial survey had labeled primitive. Council members across dozens of star systems accessed the file. The initial reaction was a uniform, stunned silence. Then the debates began. The tension was not about the outcome. The sensor logs and visual evidence were incontrovertible. The tension was about the implications. Multiple delegations, watching the footage of duct tape disabling quantum shields and lubricant seizing security systems, recognized a disturbing pattern in their own technological paradigms. The Kelvin ambassador pointed to their own micro-singularity power cores, marvels of engineering that required a 12-stage startup sequence and a dedicated cast of technicians. The Threxian representative admitted their planetary defense grid could be disabled by a single specific energy frequency they had considered too basic to secure. The report held up a mirror, and every species saw their own potential vulnerabilities reflected back at them. The Galactic Council chamber became a forum for a much larger argument. The debate was no longer about one failed invasion. It was about the fundamental path of technological development. Had the pursuit of flawless, hyper-specialized systems created a galaxy of brittle, unadaptable powers? Was complexity itself the weakness? The arguments raged for solar cycles. Older civilizations defended their millennia of progress. Younger, more pragmatic species saw a new doctrine emerging from the human homeworld. This led to a quiet, practical revolution. Species began to experiment. Engineering teams across the galaxy started incorporating human-style adaptability into their designs. They developed modular systems that could be physically reconfigured in the field. They created repair protocols that emphasized function over form. A Threxian warship, damaged in a meteor shower, used a Kelvin adhesive polymer to seal a hull breach after noticing its properties were similar to the human epoxy from the reports. It worked. The practice spread. The goal shifted from creating perfect technology to creating resilient technology. The silver roll of duct tape, once a symbol of primitivism, was recontextualized. It became a galactic shorthand for practical, flexible problem-solving. It represented the ability to find a solution with the tools at hand, not the tools you wished you had. Military academies added courses on resource-based tactical adaptation. Engineering symposiums held panels on the strategic application of simple materials. The tape was a testament to a different kind of intelligence, one the galaxy had forgotten. Earth's status underwent a complete reorientation. They were not granted a seat on the High Council. They were given something more valuable: respect. They became an unconventional but listened-to power. Their victory was not seen as a fluke but as a masterclass in asymmetric strategy. Other civilizations stopped seeing humanity as a curiosity and started seeing them as specialists in a field no one else had thought to master: practical ingenuity. This created a new demand. Human engineers, once isolated on their single world, found themselves receiving consultation requests from across the spiral arm. A Kelvin mining guild needed a way to stabilize a collapsing asteroid tunnel without heavy machinery. They contracted a human engineering firm. The solution involved repurposed tension cables and a fast-setting composite foam, a method inspired by terrestrial construction techniques. A Threxian science vessel, trapped by a gravitic anomaly, was freed when a human consultant suggested rerouting auxiliary power through the environmental control system using modified conduits. Their ability to devise innovative approaches became a valued commodity. The resolution was a quiet but profound shift in galactic consciousness. The Council learned that advanced did not always mean complex. Sometimes, It meant adaptable. The ability to change, to improvise, to use a tool in a way its creators never intended. That was now recognized as a form of technological sophistication. The galaxy had spent eons building taller towers. Humanity had just demonstrated the value of also knowing how to build a better ladder. This new understanding set the stage for a final philosophical assessment of what had truly been lost and won. Dr. Maya Patel stood at the podium in the United Nations General Assembly. The room was silent. The view screens showed a relay to every Dominion ship still in orbit.
She did not smile.
She placed a simple object on the podium, a roll of silver duct tape. "You assessed our technology as primitive," she began, her voice clear and level. "You were correct. We made it that way on purpose." She let the silence stretch. "After the Roswell incident, we faced a choice. We could spend a century trying to replicate your quantum drives and energy weapons. We chose a different path. We chose to understand the principles, not the products. We learned how your technology worked so we could learn how to make it work for us." She picked up the roll of tape. "You saw this as a temporary fix for a broken hose. We saw it as a conductive mesh, a pressure-sensitive adhesive, a tensile-strength fabric. You focused on building perfect, unassailable systems. We focused on building a culture that could subvert any system it encountered. Our global repair culture was not a sign of poverty. It was a 70-year training program in practical adaptation. Every person on this planet who has ever used a roll of tape to fix something was preparing for your arrival." Patel's tone shifted. It became sharper, more direct. "You believed the most dangerous adversary was the one with the biggest guns. You were wrong. The most dangerous adversary is the one who can turn your guns against you. The one who sees your perfect quantum shield and asks not how to break it, but how to reroute its power. The one who looks at your impenetrable security door and sees a lubricant point, not a lock." She tore a strip of tape from the roll. The sound was loud in the quiet hall. "This represents a philosophy, not a technology. It is the belief that any problem has a solution if you are flexible enough to see it. That the intended purpose of a tool is just a suggestion. That complexity is not strength. Adaptability is strength." She held the strip up. "Your scanners saw simple acrylic adhesive on a cloth backing. They did not see the potential for a circuit bypass, a hull patch, a wire splice, a restraint, a seal, a handle, a marker, a filter, a reinforcement, a distraction, a tool." She listed each potential use with a flat, factual tone. "You designed your systems to resist a plasma blast. You never designed them to resist a new idea." Her final statement was not a boast. It was a simple declaration of fact, delivered with the weight of proven experience. "We have a saying on Earth. It is the foundation of our strategic doctrine." She looked directly into the camera feed aimed at the Dominion fleet. "If you can't fix it with duct tape, you're not using enough." She placed the roll back on the podium and stepped away. The message was delivered. The philosophy was explained. The galaxy now understood that humanity's victory was not an accident. It was the result of a deliberate, calculated choice to value flexibility over force, ingenuity over inertia. The assembly remained silent, absorbing the stark redefinition of what it meant to be advanced. The view screens shifted to show the combined fleets in orbit, one of alien design, the other now incorporating patches of silver tape alongside quantum alloy, a visual testament to the new doctrine. The view screen now shows a different fleet. Dominion warships, their polished hulls gleaming, move in steady formation alongside the patched-together human vessels. In the foreground, a joint repair operation is underway. A Dominion heavy cruiser's scarred plating is being sealed. The material is not a nanite-infused quantum patch. It is a wide strip of silver duct tape, applied by a mixed team of human and Dominion engineers. The tape now appears alongside quantum technology in both fleets. A simple human tool has become a shared galactic solution. The lesson is learned. The most dangerous adversary is not the one with the biggest weapons, but the one who can turn your weapons against you with ingenuity and a roll of duct tape. Galaxy's fleet commander Zorb stared at the view screen, watching another human drone attach itself to his flagship's hull. His science officer had dismissed it as primitive scrap metal, held together with adhesive tape. But now the entire bridge crew watched in horror as their quantum shields flickered and failed. They'd mocked Earth's technology, called it pathetic. Now they were learning the hard way that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't sophistication, it was adaptability. Fleet Commander Zorb's fingers drummed a slow, heavy rhythm on the armrest of his command chair. The tactical briefing on Earth scrolled across the main bridge display, a tedious parade of predictable data. High Command had stamped this one routine pacification, another primitive species to fold into the Dominion's expanding territory. Zorb had pacified 12 systems in the last cycle alone. This would make 13. Unlucky for them, his science officer Vex stood at the primary data console, pointer in hand. Initial deep scan assessments complete, Commander. The species self-identifies as humanity. Technological profile indicates a fractured pre-quantum developmental stage. They utilize combustion for local transport, radio waves for planetary communication, and possess only rudimentary orbital infrastructure. An image flickered onto the view screen, a boxy ground vehicle, rust visible along its wheel wells, belching visible exhaust. A low murmur of amusement rippled through the bridge crew. Another image replaced it, a primitive satellite, its solar panels misaligned, its casing streaked with micrometeorite scars. A tactical officer stifled a laugh behind his hand. Zorb didn't smile. He was bored. Defensive capabilities. Vex called up a new schematic. Orbital platforms armed with kinetic projectiles and low-yield lasers. Ground-based missile silos. All are tracked, targeted, and can be neutralized from high orbit. Their most advanced energy readings suggest experimental fusion reactors, but nothing that can pierce our shields. They are, to use the technical term, pre-quantum era toys. The commander waved a dismissive hand. Conclude the assessment, the science officer nodded. Tactical computer gives a 99.7% probability of victory within the first 12 standard hours of engagement. Minimal resource expenditure. A clean, efficient operation. A junior officer at a sensor station cleared his throat, hesitant. Commander, I'm detecting faint anomalous energy signatures from the planetary surface. Irregular patterns. They don't match any known weapon or power profile. It might be worth... Dismissed. Zorb cut him off, not even looking in his direction. The junior officer fell silent, his console going dark. The senior staff exchanged knowing glances. Let the young ones hunt for ghosts. This was a milk run. The War Council's approval signal chimed on Zorb's command screen. Immediate invasion protocols authorized. Minimal fleet allocation. Barely a third of his ships would even see action. He skimmed the orders, then leaned back in his chair. He made a casual, fluttering gesture with his fingers toward his communications officer. Deploy the first wave. Make it quick and clean, and get a reconnaissance team on the ground. I want a closer look at their material repositories before the main bombardment begins. See what they're working with. The Dominion stealth shuttle settled on the cracked asphalt without a sound, its cloaking field blending perfectly with the deep Minnesota night. The airlock hissed open. 4 elite scouts moved out in perfect tactical formation, their multi-spectrum visors scanning the squat, flat-roofed building before them. Their mission orders identified it as a primitive material repository. They expected a crude forge, perhaps a storage shed for hand tools. The team leader gestured toward the main entrance. His cutting tool sliced through the simple metal bolt lock in half a second. They moved inside, sensors active, expecting a dark, disorganized space. Instead, motion-activated lights flickered on overhead, illuminating a cavernous interior that stretched back into a grid of impossibly long aisles. The first scout froze, his helmet tilting. His tactical display was trying to categorize the sheer volume of identical items. He was looking at an entire aisle 40 meters long dedicated to a single product. Rolls of a silver-gray material sat stacked on shelves from floor to ceiling. He focused his scanner on one. The label read duct tape. He moved down the aisle. The next section held the same product, but in black. Then white. Then a garish array of colors, red, blue, yellow. His scanner identified further subdivisions. Extra strength, weather-resistant, professional grade. He began documenting it, a sense of bewildered amusement growing. They had an entire section of their material repository for different colors of adhesive tape. Another scout stopped at a different aisle. His attention was captured by a small aerosol can with a distinctive blue and yellow label. D40, the human script read. His scanner indicated a petroleum-based chemical mixture with low-grade lubricating and penetrating properties. Out of sheer professional curiosity, he sprayed a tiny amount on the joint of his own plasma cutter's articulation arm, which had been slightly stiff since a training exercise. The joint moved with a new fluid ease that was frankly startling for such a primitive compound. He shrugged, impressed despite himself, and tossed a can into his sample bag. The team fanned out, their mission parameters shifting from reconnaissance to collection. They filled crates with samples, treating the entire operation as a low-priority scavenger hunt. They gathered tubes of a two-part epoxy that promised to bond any surface forever. They collected packages of plastic cable ties in various lengths and strengths. They took several containers of something called Gorilla Glue, its label featuring a threatening-looking primate. Their sensors pinged softly, detecting the low-power radio frequency emissions from the building's security cameras. The team leader glanced at the blinking red lights in the ceiling corners. Basic motion-activated recording devices. His system categorized the signal as a non-threat, a Class 1 nuisance emission. He sent a low-power jamming pulse that would corrupt the data streams. Harmless. His report to the shuttle was succinct. Reconnaissance complete. Facility is a low-technology hardware distribution center. Inventory consists primarily of temporary repair adhesives and fasteners. No advanced materials or weapon components detected. Technology level is even more primitive than initial intelligence suggested. The tone was dry, dismissive. The shuttle's cargo bay closed on 3 crates filled with what the scouts considered amusingly crude samples. They had collected the tools of their own defeat and labeled them as junk. The stealth craft lifted off silently into the pre-dawn darkness, its crew completely unaware they had just raided humanity's most versatile armory. The crates were tagged for immediate laboratory analysis aboard the flagship. Chief Science Officer Vex unrolled a length of the silver material across the chilled surface of the primary analysis table. The glossy backing reflected the harsh lab lights. His team stood in a respectful semicircle, data pads ready, their expressions a mix of professional curiosity and subtle condescension. They were the Dominion's finest minds, tasked with analyzing the crates of junk hauled up from the human world. This was not the work they were trained for. Vex activated a multispectral scanner. The results flickered onto the main display. He expected to see the simple polymer structure of a crude adhesive strip. The initial readout made his secondary eyelids blink slowly. The tape's tensile strength was unexpectedly high. Its adhesive properties showed a unique bonding mechanism, one that activated under pressure and formed a connection that was surprisingly resilient to temperature fluctuation and moisture. He picked up 2 sample plates from the table, one a titanium alloy used in hull construction, the other a polycarbonate viewport material. They were fundamentally incompatible. Vex applied a short strip of the tape, pressing it firmly. He then attached a tensile strength gauge to each plate and began to pull. The gauge's reading climbed steadily, far past the point where any standard adhesive would have failed. The plates held. The bond didn't break at the adhesive layer. The tape's fabric backing began to fray and stretch first. He noted the data point. The material could bind dissimilar surfaces under stress. It was a clever, if primitive, solution.